Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics. In a previous video, I showed you how to make this really cute fabric basket using a standard size pillowcase kit. We call them magic pillowcase kits here at Shabby Fabrics. It's a really fun process to be able to take one of our standard size pillowcase kits that has the 3 fabrics, and we turned it into this fun fabric basket. Well, we thought, what would that look like if we used some strips, jelly roll strips, and we made the same basket? Different look, a very similar process. So today's project, here, I'll move this one. This was, by the way, made out of animal cracker, Moda Fabrics. So this one today, same concept, just a little bit different. We'll be going over, even if you've never watched the previous video, I'll take you from beginning to end and you can see how fun it is with just 10 jelly roll strips, 2.5 inch by width of fabric, a 1/2 yard for the lining. We'll need a 1/2 yard of fusible fleece and 1 yard of fusible interfacing, and you'll have this adorable basket. And you can easily make that project in just a couple hours. So what that means for you is with 1 jelly roll and 2 yards of fabric, plus your interfacing and your fusible fleece, you'll be able to make 4 baskets. Now this collection is called On the Go. It's by Stacy Issue by Moda Fabrics, and we had a lot of fun with this. We have a lot of our employees have young kids, so we had fun with that, with the home and away quilts. As you can see, we have the travel size pillowcases, the standard size pillowcases, and so it made sense for us to go ahead and make the fun coordinating fabric basket using the Moda jelly roll with that. But as you can see, with all of these other possibilities of jelly rolls, you can just imagine it'd be beautiful. It doesn't have to just be to help our kids keep their toys and books organized. We could be using that in our sewing room, maybe even a guest bathroom where we could use like some pretty florals, some rolled up towels, and kind of place the towels in vertically. It's just a nice accent really to any room. So we are going to go ahead and just jump right into the project. It's a free download. You'll be looking for the jelly roll fabric basket, and you can download that. If you're watching on YouTube, there'll be a link in the description box to go ahead and grab that. And if you're watching on the Shabby Fabrics website, toward the bottom of our homepage, there's a link to go ahead and click there to see videos and get your free download there. And let a friend know about this. I think we all want to get organized and have fun, that we can have fun making our own baskets and be able to, as I said, get organized and have a beautiful accent for our home. So with this particular On the Go, as you can see, we started off with we just randomly grabbed strips, all different variety, or you could have a more organized look, which is what we're going to be doing today. We'll be going for a gray and a yellow combination. I know a lot of today's young couples having kids love that combination, so that's the one I'll be doing today. So right away in our download, we talk about our required fabrics, some recommended products. I'll just speak to those as we're using them. For our outer basket, we're going to need 10 strips. 9 of those will be pieced around the basket, and 1 will be pieced around the top. So whatever that one is that you want from around the top, go ahead and set that aside. And for the ones that you do select, I selected, as I mentioned, the gray and the yellow. You'll take those 10 strips and you're going to cut them right at the fold. So you'll have 2 sets of 9 strips, and then you can just decide on what arrangement you would like those to be positioned in. And we just have a suggested layout there. You can do whatever you want with that. And you'll sew those together just side by side, and you're going to press your seams open. Now, when I went ahead and sewed this, I did 2 strips, 2 strips, 2 strips, and then, join groups of 4. What I recommend, rather than just sewing the 2 together and then adding on and adding on, it can kind of create a little bit of bowing. So that's why whenever I am sewing strips together, I sew them in pairs of 2 and then join them into 4s in groups like that. It helps prevent the bowing. Now this will naturally measure 2.5. These are 2 inches finished, but this is now 2 1/4. So this is going to measure 18.5 inches here. Now we go ahead and turn this, and we're going to square this up to be 18 inches. So 18.5 wide, 18 inches exactly. And hey, you know what, by the way, while I'm thinking about it, if you have a collection of fabric you love and maybe you can't find a jelly roll, and there are some collections out there that don't have pre-cuts, you can always use that Creative Grid 2.5 inch wide by 24.5 inch ruler. Use your own fabrics or maybe a collection you've seen on our website and just cut your own strips. So, you know, sometimes that's happened to me where maybe the pre-cut is not available anymore, or they were never made with that particular fabric collection. So that's an option for you. Okay, and you can see the ends are uneven, right? Even though I lined up my strips, they often end up different measurements down here. So just be sure to clean off that edge that has the selvage, clean off that first, measure over 18. So once that's done, our piece will be measuring 18.5 by 18. With your fusible fleece, with just the fusible fleece, you will be cutting 2 pieces that are also 18.5 by 18. So this is 18.5 by 18, and really you're doing the same thing with your fusible interfacing. So while you're cutting that measurement, you might as well do that at the same time. That's a little bit downstream from where we are right now, but it's the same exact cut. Once you have that done, this is fusible on one side. That's the side you're going to want up. I went ahead and placed my strips. Of course, I would have trimmed that up already and placed them exactly on top. And I just ironed those together. Don't be afraid to use steam. And that's what this is going to look like. So rather than me squaring up that 1 to 18 inches, you've seen me square up plenty of things. You don't need to watch me do that. That's what's on the back of this right now. So we've ironed this together, and I would highly recommend, if you think you're going to wash these baskets, go ahead and either do some quilting on here, stitch in the ditch is what I went ahead and did, just straight down these lanes. You could do a double needle, that might be a really cool look, to go straight down, kind of straddling that seam on both sides. But if you're thinking, I'm never going to wash these baskets, it's an extra step, and maybe you don't even want to do that. Okay, once this is done, now we're right here in our pattern. I love to use Creative Grid rulers, especially when they're the exact measurement that I'm looking for. And in this case, they are. So we'll go ahead and we'll place this in our corner, and we're just going to cut out these notches so that we can have a boxed corner. Now you can either draw with a pen, just like that, and grab a pair of scissors. I'm going to show you a couple options here, and then you can decide what you want to do. And we'll just cut that out. These are a Bordeaux scissor from Clover. Any longer scissor really is great. These are the ones I happen to have with me. I tend to use my smaller Kai scissors on smaller projects. You could absolutely do that, but I like, anytime it's a long cut, I tend to grab for this type of a scissor. The other option that you could do over in this corner, if you're comfortable and you don't think you'll overcut that corner, is to use a rotary cutter. Sometimes I come up just a touch short of it, and I come back and do that last little bit visually, just like that, just like that. So whatever you're comfortable with, I just want to throw that out there. I know once you make one of these baskets, you're going to want to make a lot of these because they're really fun to make. Trust me, I'm like, okay, what other collections can I be using to make baskets for my own house? And what a great gift, right? What a wonderful gift. Okay, now you'll do that same thing. Remember, we had 2 sets of these strip rolls because we cut it in half. So you could do the same arrangement if you would like, or just mix and match and have a completely scrappy look. I've chosen to go ahead and do the same arrangement, and now I will place those right side together. And by the way, when I sewed those strips together, I was using a standard 1/4" seam allowance. This project, unlike the first basket where we used 1/2" seam allowances all throughout, this basket will be entirely 1/4" seam allowances. So let me just show you what I'll be doing here. I'm going to sew a 1/4" down each side, right down here. Let me turn it so it's the same orientation of what you're seeing. Right down here and right across the bottom. We're not going to do anything here because that's where we'll box our corners. So I'll go ahead, because we have other things I want to show you. I'll sew those 1/4" seam allowances, and I'm going to press those seams open. So when we come back, we're going to be able to move right on to the lining part, and I'll be able to take you on that next phase of making your basket. So I have those side seams and bottom sewn. Press the seams open. Hey, if you ever struggle with, like, how do I iron this? You know, I just kind of get my pressing mat, my wool pressing mat, and just kind of flatten this out onto itself and iron. And then across the bottom, because that can be like, how do I iron this thing? I just kind of push it back onto itself and then press that seam open. So if you have any issues with that, hopefully that'll help. All right, we're now on page 2 on the very top. We'll box the corner. So grab your bag, and I just pull to the side, and you can see those seams, those pressed open seams line up very nicely. And we'll go ahead and use our flower head pins. These are from Clover. Whenever I'm working with a lot of bulk, I grab for these instead of my patchwork pins, which is what the smaller is that I always use when I'm doing any kind of piecing and quilting. But once you start adding fusible fleece, things start getting bulky very quickly. You can easily bend patchwork pins if you're not careful, and I don't want to do that. So you'll just close that opening, keeping those seams. You can even put a pin this direction, right down that seam. Just keep that a 1/4" at least away from the edge, because that will be your seam allowance. And we're going to do the same thing on both sides and sew a 1/4" seam allowance. You know, we can go quickly do that together. That way we can move straight into our lining fabric. And you can see these can come together very quickly, and that's a lot of fun. You'll be able to make several baskets in a day. All right, let's just go sew that real quick since we're here. So with the main part of the bag here, I'll just trim some threads off. You'll go ahead and leave that with the wrong side out. I know if you're like me, you're like, I want to turn it out. Nope, not yet. That's coming though. So let's just put that aside for the moment, and we'll move right on to the lining portion of our bag. Put that over there for just a bit. Oh, there's another thread there. Okay, so now we're on to the lining portion. So that's our 1/2 yard of fabric. So that's our fabric here. And as it's shown in the diagram, and because I have limited space, and that'd be 44 inches, you're just going to take that one strip that you've held aside, and you're sewing that here. You're actually going to cut the lining fabric to 16 inches by width of fabric. So you're going to cut that to 16 by width of fabric, and then you'll sew that strip to the top of that, pressing the seam open. I wanted to point out one thing to you, and we make a note in our pattern. It says important. If you're using directional fabric for that top strip, note the orientation before sewing it. The 2.5-inch strip will be folded to the outside of the basket, so it should be oriented upside down in this arrangement. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Now in this particular assortment here, this fabric isn't really directional, but this one was. So I grabbed that strip out. So let's just pretend this is the fabric that you wanted to be on the top of this strip. You would want to have, now that's the normal orientation, flip it 180 degrees and you'll sew it that way, because when you flip it to the outside of your basket, then it would be properly oriented. So I wanted to definitely point that out, because when we made our sample basket at first, we had it upside down. So like, oops, so I wanted to definitely point that out so you don't make that same mistake. So now that we have this here, this long unit, because our other strip piece unit was 18.5 inches wide by 18, we too have to go ahead and trim this to be 18.5 this direction and 18 long, and you'll need 2 of those, of course. So we're really going to be repeating the same process. Once you have both of those to be 18.5 by 18, you're going to box the corners. That's what I'm trying to say, is the same exact step. So again, you can go ahead and draw in those corners and cut, or use a rotary cutter as you prefer. And just to speed things up, I'll go ahead and use the rotary cutter. And we'll be boxing the corners exactly, and I do mean exactly the same way. So I'll do that off camera just to save us a little bit of time. By the way, if you do choose the rotary cutter option rather than doing this dangerous cut, just turn this way, and that way it's very natural to make this cut here and just come in this direction. There we are. So just like before, we have one piece, the other one is just like it. Oh, by the way, forgot to mention to you, and this is really important. Glad that I have this piece of interfacing. Remind me, once you sew these together, remember I talked about cutting that fusible interfacing to 18.5 by 18. You would go ahead and fuse that. That's what's on the back of this right here. So it's very easy to forget that. That's why it's kind of great to go ahead and cut those pieces out and even kind of put them together so you don't forget that step. It just helps give the bag a little bit more shape and structure. So once you have that interfacing on there, hey, if you wanted to quilt it again, you of course could do that. We did not opt to do the quilting on that. Now you place them right sides together, and again, sewing 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch, pressing the seams open. I'll go ahead and get that part done. So when I come back, then I can show you what our next step is to complete the basket. So I went ahead and did the side seams at the bottom and pressed things open, and I realized boxing the corners is the exact same thing. And we mentioned that in the pattern. So just to save time, I went ahead and boxed those corners exactly the same. Now we do go ahead and turn the lining to the right side out and just smooth that out with your hands. I have a point turner with me. You can certainly do that with your hands. Sometimes in smaller spaces, I'll grab for my point turner. But if you are wanting to get everything just absolutely 90 degrees in those corners, it's a great tool. I've used it for so many things. And it's not just for points. They kind of have the curve thing. Not applicable to this project, but great for when you need to have a curve pushed out. Okay, let's grab our, what we were calling kind of the outside of the bag. And now, of course, we have our side seam here, and we have our side seam here. I'm going to place the lining inside this portion, lining up the side seams. So I'll just go right inside. Kind of just trying to fit that same profile in there and lining those sides up. So the bag, just work it around. And we'll line up those seams. And now you can wonder clip that. You could do, in fact, I will use some wonder clips in this one. Now I will take off this plate on my machine and I'll be sewing from this side. So when you put the wonder clip onto the bag, the profile of a wonder clip, if you've never used one before, there's a flat side and there's that kind of curving side. You want the flat side to be what's against this plate. So that's the part that will be on the inside and the colorful part will be to the outside. I have definitely clipped an entire project absolutely in the reverse. And then when I took it to my machine, I'm like, why is this so awkward? It's because this curve is not going to ride well along a flat surface. So go ahead and pin your two sides and everything in between, and we'll be sewing our opening closed, except we need to leave about a 6-inch opening to turn our bag through. And I always recommend that you have that opening not on the side, but somewhere on one of those more open sides. So we'll just keep clipping that together and take that to my sewing machine. Where you have that opening, be sure to reinforce in the beginning and the end, because as you're pulling the bag through, there'll be tension and you could potentially kind of unset some of your stitches if you don't have that back stitch. So I'll keep clipping so it's nice and smooth all the way around. It'll give me a chance to take the plate off of my machine, and then I'll meet you back at my sewing machine and we'll go ahead. I'll start about here, reinforce the beginning, so 1/4 inch all the way around and stop and reinforce, and then we'll turn our bag through and take you to the next step. Okay, my favorite part is here, and that is getting to turn the bag through. Not bag, basket. What am I saying here? I guess I'm so used to doing bags and not baskets. If I've called this a bag already, I apologize. I'm not sure if I've done that today, but let's turn it through. You can see why you needed that opening to get, that's a lot of bulk coming through there with the fusible fleece and the interfacing, and of course all the strips and the lining. So push that through. If you need to use your point turner to get everything out in the corner, by all means, I'll just use my hands with this one. And of course, this is our lining. So now we'll push that inside. Push that all the way in there. All the way. So here's our opening. Let me get the iron heating up again. So you can see the fabric, you know, it kind of resists that. Go ahead and smooth that down. Keep pushing it to the inside. And I kind of just roll that with my fingers. Once you have that rolled, we grab our clips again. These are our friend on this one. We'll go ahead and clip that again with the pretty side out. And where your opening is, since we've been sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, let me move that out of the way, we'll just press this inward by 1/4 inch. Okay, and now on the other side, not as agreeable, but we'll go ahead and turn it down. Sorry, my head I'm sure is in the way. Basically, we need to turn both sides down 1/4 inch, and you know, even if you don't press that's fine. Just grab your Wonder Clips, clip that all the way around, and in the areas where there's not the opening, our goal is really to just kind of flatten that out. See that little bubble there? You're just trying to smooth that with your fingers, just like I did here with the yellow clip, all the way around. Now, you can go ahead if you have a cord. We're going to see the thread, of course, because that's what's out here. So let's say you're doing something in black. I would certainly not be piecing or doing anything with a white thread, but this is where if you want to use a coordinating thread, this is where you go ahead and add that to your machine. I'll just go ahead and stay with the cream that I have. This is called, this is Confetti 50 weight cotton KT101. It's a nice, kind of goes with everything I feel like, unless I'm working with a darker fabric, and then I would absolutely be changing that out. So because we sewed with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, we will top stitch around the entire top. We smooth that down, and then we'll go right to the machine. And now we need to use an 1/8 inch seam allowance, something less than our 1/4. You see how I'm just rolling this with my fingers just to get that all the way out. So let's go ahead and so here's our bag, and now we just turn the top down. Oh my gosh, this is adorable. And the top, you know, you can turn it down as much as you'd like. We just turned it down so you'd see some of the cute lining. And the other thing we discovered, let me just get that all the way turned out evenly, is in order to give it even more structure, if you see how it's got the corners, you kind of just grab it and you can put a press in there, and it just helps the basket to stand up even more. Here, I'll just demonstrate that real quick on those 4 corners. So, you know, we would love to know, leave us a comment, you know, who are you going to be making these baskets for? Maybe your kids, maybe grandkids, maybe a friend that you would love to see that, and maybe some beautiful florals. Again, we did a kid theme, but this is a great basket in any fabrics and will look beautiful really in any home. And I know my goal this year is getting organized. Less clutter, more organized. I'm not losing things. I know where things are. Always been a goal. Okay, and isn't that nice now with that little press? It has even more form and more body. So I know it's been a longer video, but how fun to learn how to make these amazing baskets using a jelly roll, and with 1 jelly roll, 2 yards of fabric or 4 half-yard cuts, in some interfacing and some fusible fleece, we can make these adorable and useful baskets. So thank you so much. Subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you on a future Shabby video.